Okay, so I know that a lot of you are downright bored of Brandon Aiyuk and Trent Williams contract talk at this point. And I know that a lot of you have a lot of curiosity about what actually happened at the 49ers practice, not just from Brock Purdy, who's muscled up, but also from guys like Malik Mustapha. Maybe even you want to hear a little bit about Spencer Burford. Want to hear about some of the 49ers new faces like Leonard Floyd. I have all that information for you in this show. The trusty old notebook right here has a lot of the information. And there's another notebook up here. I've been taking mental notes, I've been taking written notes, and we're going to talk about the 49ers at practice today beyond the Aiyuk hold in and the Trent Williams hold out. There's a team that's out there practicing now, and I'm sure that they want both of these star players out there to join the rest of the guys shortly, but there are dozens and dozens of other players doing some important work for the 49ers, including Malik Mustapha. I think that he had the best defensive play of practice today, ranging from center field, second team safety. Right now, Jair Brown and George Odom are the first team safeties with Talanoa, Hufanga, and Pup. But that rangy play from Malik Mustapha was an interception on a deep throw from Josh Dobbs intended for Danny Gray. And we talk about Mustapha being a ball of muscle. Well, he can also move. And to me, if he can move and he can cover big range, big ground in center field, he can be a legitimate safety at this NFL level. Not just going to be a glorified blitzer playing near that box, not just going to be some kind of, extra linebacker who can cover guys near the line of scrimmage. No, if he can play center field, he can play safety, and he can be a truly adaptable weapon that the 49ers covet on the defensive side of the football. And I think they're going to covet even more with Brandon Staley now aboard, helping scheme some of the defense. This is a look, by the way, at the 49ers defensive backs from practice today. There's Malik Mustapha, 43, talking about the ball of muscle. You can tell he's really physically developed for a rookie. And you're not going to get to see him move as well as he moved on that interception in this clip. But you get to see some other body types there, including Renardo Green, 31 right in front of you. That was Isaac Yiadom, 22. His arrow, by the way, is up. Isaac Yiadom seems to be the early favorite for the 49ers, and as you get another look at Malik Mustapha. But he seems to be the early favorite to be that outside cornerback, outside Charvarius Ward in nickel situations. Yiadom wears number 22. I'm not sure if we're going to get another shot of him in this video that I took from the sideline. There he is. There's Yiadom. Big corner. You can tell. Long, wiry. He's going to be wearing that number 22. And I think that the 49ers, as they try to get back to basics, they want to run that cover 3 really well. Isaac Yiadom is going to be the type of corner playing press man that they'll really like in that spot. So we pan through. You have a look at Jair Brown, starting safety now. 26 is Chase Lucas. He's going to be competing for a spot on this team as a gunner and as a backup nickelback. There's Ambry Thomas and Diomedar Lenore. Lenore, obviously a first-team guy, sliding into that nickel spot for the 49ers when he's needed. But Ambry Thomas is now, at least to start training camp, firmly a second-teamer for the 49ers. So this is your look at the defensive backs working hard. 38 is Kamon Hall. There's Darrell Luter Jr. too. He's a dark horse, but you can tell big body as well. Somebody who's rangy who might be able to fit into what the 49ers are doing. Back to Malik Mustapha though, because I think this is one of the rookies that's been getting the most hype coming from the spring into this training camp. And I described the play. I said, wow, impressive range from Malik Mustapha. Obviously a really nice interception as well to finish. We were very curious what Kyle Shanahan would think of the play, and you can have a listen to Kyle right here on Malik Mustapha's interception.
Awesome, because I just watched the route, and I thought Danny got the corner, so I thought he was going to win on the go route, and then the middle third safety picked it off with ease. So he showed his range there. I got to kind of see what the quarterback did. Hopefully he didn't stare it down, but if he looked him off and he still got there, then it was extremely impressive. But it was still showed a lot regardless of what the quarterback did, being able to get there, eat that up, because if he didn't, it was a big play.
That was Josh Dobbs who threw that pick, and you heard Kyle Shanahan say, hopefully he looked him off. That means look the other way, try to get the safety to at least freeze so he can't anticipate which way he's going to break. Shanahan at that point had not yet seen the tape. I'm sure at this point he has seen the tape. It'll be interesting to talk to him a little bit later on when we do have a chance and ask if on that Mustapha interception, if Josh Dobbs did indeed look Mustapha off. Because if he looked Mustapha off and Malik was still able to burst across the field and cut in front of that deep ball intended for Danny Gray, that shows you even more athleticism and more burst from Malik Mustapha. But as you heard Kyle Shanahan say, even if Josh Dobbs made a big mistake and didn't look him off, well, it was still a lot of ground covered on that play for Malik Mustapha. Speaking of that quarterback position with Josh Dobbs, he's competing with Brandon Allen. They're splitting second team reps. This is what the 49ers did last year when you saw Trey Lance competing for that second team with Sam Darnold. Darnold ended up winning that battle against Lance. The 49ers traded Lance to the Dallas Cowboys. Darnold seems to have rehabilitated a lot of his image as a quarterback in his year as Brock Purdy's backup with the 49ers. Supposedly, he tore it up at Minnesota Vikings training camp today. We heard from Justin Jefferson saying that Sam Darnold was airing it out, throwing a lot of dimes downfield. So anyway, whatever happens in these practices, whatever happens over the course of this season at the QB2 position could have some ramifications league-wide because the 49ers have developed a reputation as being a little bit of a QB factory now with that Brock Purdy success story and with Sam Darnold obviously working underneath him last season. But we talk about the QB2 battle this year. It was just one practice today, and pads weren't on. I thought throws were very limited, but the one mistake, or at least the one turnover that was committed on Josh Dobbs' watch today. Brandon Allen got the first reps in this practice after Brock Purdy, and then we saw Dobbs, but they both got to alternate with the second team offensive line working against the two defense. I log incompletions and completions, so I can tell you exactly what both quarterbacks or all three quarterbacks did if you want to hear about Brock Purdy first. Why don't we talk about Purdy first since he is the starter? Very first pass of the season for Brock Purdy, or of training camp this season, was a play action roll to the near side toward the bleachers where I was sitting. Because of the soccer game at Levi Stadium tonight, there were no fans. I think that fans are going to be able to watch training camp for the first time tomorrow. Anyway, Purdy rolls toward me, and he airs one out with the pass rush coming toward him. Downfield, about 25 yards on the corner route to his tight end, Eric Saubert. Saubert might be in the driver's seat, or at least the early favorite to be the 49ers tight end too. This is a guy that they picked up in free agency. He's been in the league since 2017, was actually drafted in the same round, the 5th round of that draft, as George Kittle. And Brock Purdy made a really nice throw on the run to him. That was the first throw of training camp. So if first impressions mean something, well, Brock Purdy's first impression was good, and so was Eric Saubert's, because he climbed the ladder to go get the football. But I will say that Purdy put it exactly where it had to be, so it would clear the defender and also be able to hit Eric Saubert before he went out of bounds. One other thing about Saubert, and I know that the 49ers have a tight end room that looks very, very different this year. A lot of new tight ends on this football team. I'll pop open the roster for you, but Saubert, guy, is strong, and I don't think that blocking is going to be an issue for him. I think that he's been able to stick around in the NFL for as long as he has. He's entering year 8 because he's been able to do some of the dirtier work well. And the fact that he was able to make that catch, and the fact that he was Purdy's first throw today in practice of training camp, shows you that he might be able to contribute in the pass game as well. So I do like Eric Saubert's chances to be the tight end too, behind George Kittle. Obviously, we still have a long training camp to go. All right, I promised the roster. Here it is. If you want to take a look at what we're dealing with at the tight end position, I have Braden Willis ahead of Saubert right now, but I think that we can make a quick change. I think that Saubert, just his veteran status, and he's highlighted in teal because he is a free agent pickup for the 49ers. I think that we can confidently slot Saubert right here into that tight end 2 spot. And I think that Braden Willis, the second-year player who had a nice OTAs, I think that he's going to have to prove that he can leapfrog an 8-year veteran. So we'll put Willis into that depth 1 position after watching the practice today and seeing how the 49ers were lining up in that first practice. So Saubert next to Kittle, Braden Willis, Logan Thomas at that tight end position. I think he's got to develop into a better blocker to have a legitimate shot at a lot of playing time, but he did have 55 catches for Washington last year. So that adds quite a bit of quite a bit of potential receiving prowess to a tight end 2 room that has really struggled to maintain that over the course of these seasons for the 49ers. Brock Purdy talked about the 49ers tight end room, and we have a little bit of video about, and I think there's something that you might notice about Brock Purdy talking about the 49ers tight end room. Just have to find it here, and then we'll pop it open. We have a lot of Brock Purdy content. Throwing to young wide receivers. Mike sent a lot of this Brock Purdy stuff to me, and I'm having just trouble sifting through all this content that we have. Here's how Brock Purdy feels about the new tight end room. So we will play that promptly. Here we go.
Yeah. I think the way he came in for OTAs and we started throwing pretty early with him and learning how he moves and how he sees things and then coming in and being ready to roll for camp, like he made a great play today. So that's something that we're going to continue to have to build off of and get after together. But I'm really excited for him and Braden Willis and his opportunity and obviously George. So it's a great room. I know George is doing a great job with leading all those boys and some young guys and new faces coming in, but having Logan Thomas come in as well and his just veteran presence, like it's gonna be a solid room. So obviously we got camp for all those boys to showcase and see what they can do and who's gonna step up. But I'm excited to work with them all and throw them the ball.
So that's Purdy on the tight end room, and I thought that there was an interesting omission there. I know it's sometimes tough to list every single guy on the roster, but it seemed that Purdy was making an effort to list as many tight ends as possible. And obviously, as we look at the roster here, he mentioned George Kittle. The question itself was about Eric Saubert. That was my question. And I was talking about the play that I just described. He went out of his way to mention Braden Willis, went out of his way to mention Logan Thomas. We've heard about the rookie Mason Pline. Jake Tonjes is obviously at the back of the roster, but a lot of people are wondering about Cam Latu, the 3rd-round pick of last year out of Alabama. Purdy did not mention him. So, you tend to just think that the guys that he goes out of his way to mention are the guys at the top of the heap, at least at this moment. And to me, it really does seem that this is the foursome that's at the top of the heap. Kittle, Saubert, Logan Thomas, and Braden Willis. Maybe not exactly in that order. Maybe Willis ahead of Logan Thomas. But I think it's going to be a fight for Mason Pline, who obviously an undrafted rookie, college basketball player up until a couple of years ago. There's going to be some refinement time needed for him. He's a really tall guy, though. He's 6'7", 6'8", so he's got a lot of potential as far as receiving ability goes. He might be a practice squad candidate. What I'm really wondering, though, is if Cam Latu can show the 49ers more than he did last training camp. We want to talk about some of the negatives from training camp today. I just talked about Purdy's first pass. Maybe we should get back to this because this is going to get to one of the negatives, and it's not Brock Purdy's fault. He completed one to Saubert, then he completed one to Danny Gray, and it seemed to me that Danny Gray was around the football a lot today. So not a bad first impression of 2024 training camp for Danny Gray, who I think projects to be on the roster bubble. He's got a lot of work to do. The pressure is on Danny Gray with a loaded roster. 49ers drafted Ricky Pearsall. That takes up a spot in the receiving room. He's going to have to come out firing this training camp to earn his spot on the 53. So there was a completion to Gray. Then there was a completion to Deebo Samuel. Deebo, by the way, is looking like he's in fantastic shape for the 49ers. We said that during OTAs. You can say it again now. We tracked some of his workout videos over the course of the dead period. There was that one treadmill video where he looked like he set that thing to 30 miles an hour. I know it wasn't that fast, but he was sprinting at over 20 miles an hour. And then he flew across the room as soon as he upped off the treadmill. But Deebo, when he's in really good condition, he's obviously a little bit lighter. I mean, he's still a brick. He's still tough to take down. But the speed, the afterburners that he has for a guy that's of bruiser's size, I think that's what makes Deebo Samuel really impressive. And he made that first catch from Brock Purdy for Purdy's third completion. So Purdy was 3 for 3 today. And then came a low snap from Jake Brendel, the center, who's back from the knee tendonitis. He missed all of the 49ers spring program. And I know that some low snaps were an issue last year. It was definitely an issue on Purdy's fourth pass attempt of the day. That was Purdy's first incompletion of training camp. He tried to hit Jawan Jennings, but the whole timing of the play got thrown off by the fact that this was a shotgun snap, low snap. Purdy had to pick it off of his cleats, and then by the time he straightened up and the play was running, you could tell that the timing of everything was off and it was an incompletion. Brendel was much better in 2022, his first year starting, than he was in 2023. He's got a little wrap around one of his knees. I'm guessing that's where the tendonitis has been affecting him. I don't know, and this is something that we'll try to find out over the course of this season, especially once we can get into the locker room. But I don't know if it was the knee tendonitis that was affecting Jake Brendel already last season. His pass protection regressed. His run blocking regressed, but especially pass protection, where he was a top 5, top 6 guy in 2022. Brendel was down near number 20, and the 49ers weren't nearly as sturdy at that center position. And that was part of the big trouble they were having along the interior line protecting Brock Purdy in 2023. So I just kind of flagged that low snap today from Jake Brendel as something like, okay, this shouldn't be happening, especially when pads aren't on and there's not a whole lot of contact up front. When pads come on, you start to see a whole lot more chaos. Becomes a little bit tougher, I think, for an offense to pass protect. I mean, it's one of those situations where when the pads are off, it's more of a flag football like sport, and you want snaps to go across cleanly. You don't want to see anything that is related to the physical chaos of football derailing your offense, a self-inflicted error. But the low snap today, a lot of people might gloss over it. A lot of people might not have even noticed it. These are the kind of things that I put into my notebook. This is the kind of stuff that I watch because I think it's going to be really important to the cohesiveness of the 49ers offense. And Brendel's got to get that ball up near Purdy's midsection so he can catch and he can lock load and be ready to throw. And that today was not the case on that fourth attempt. I know I'm being nitpicky, but this was the 49ers offense that was number 1 in the league last year. And if they're going to continue to be at the very top of the league, it's going to be small stuff like that, especially at areas of weakness that they can improve, which was the interior offensive line. Small stuff like that is going to help the 49ers pick up any remaining slack. Deebo Samuel then dropped the pass. And then Brock Purdy went deep once today, but it was well covered. It is notable that he went deep to Jacob Cowing. That is one of the 49ers draft picks, a rookie, shorter rookie, smaller rookie. But I talked about Jacob Cowing a lot this offseason. He had the fastest time out of any wide receiver at the NFL Combine as far as acceleration in the first 5 yards of the 40-yard dash went. So you talk about Danny Gray showing up a little bit today. I know that I called Danny Gray's number a few times today. That's good news for Danny. We all know that he's fast. We all know that he's a speed threat. Well, Jacob Cowing is definitely a burst acceleration threat. I think between Gray and Cowing, you might be seeing 2 guys competing for the role on the 49ers receiving core that stretches the defense. It's somebody that can get behind the defense. Taylor Gabriel did a lot of this for the Atlanta Falcons back in the day for Kyle Shanahan when he coached Taylor Gabriel. Shorter receiver, but a really, really fast receiver. Played a lot in the slot, but was able to stretch the top of the defense and then by extension open stuff up for other guys, including Julio Jones, because of his speed. So we'll see if the 49ers have that kind of threat on this team. Purdy went deep to Cowing. He was covered on the play, though, so it was incomplete. And then there was another completion to Danny Gray. Of course, when Josh Dobbs went to Gray on the deep pattern, Kyle Shanahan, you just heard him. Kyle Shanahan said that, I thought that Gray was open. I thought that it was going to be a completion from Dobbs, but it was Malik Mustapha who came over the top and logged the interception. All right, so now we can talk a little bit about Josh Dobbs' day. Couple completions, including one to Deebo Samuel. What I liked about Dobbs, and he was working with the second team, so he got second team running back action. Thrown to Jordan Mason. And Mason, I don't know if it was a drop or if it was knocked away, but there was one that was incomplete to Jordan Mason. It was hard to get an eye on it without the replay from the stands. But then there was a completion to Jordan Mason on a little angle route out of the backfield where I thought that Mason showcased the nicest set of hands that I've seen Mason showcase over the course of his 3-year 49ers career. So Dobbs threw the pick, but Dobbs also delivered to Deebo Samuel, and Dobbs also delivered to Jordan Mason out of the backfield, working behind the second team offensive line. Then you saw Brandon Allen. Only 2 completions and 2 attempts from Brandon Allen today. Like I said, wasn't a whole lot of team drill stuff for the 49ers. First, a completion to Isaac Guerendo out of the backfield, and Guerendo unfortunately got hurt a little bit later in the session, and then a completion to Jawan Jennings. Jawan Jennings is a new contract guy for the 49ers. They paid him this offseason, deal worth up to $15 million. He caught a couple of crossers at practice today. Remember that Guerendo started his career as a wide receiver, his college career. So he entered Wisconsin as a wideout. He left as a running back. He transferred to Louisville. There he was a running back. He didn't see all too much time. One of the things that dogged Isaac Guerendo, the rookie 49ers draft pick in college, were hamstring injuries. Hamstring injuries were an issue. He had a couple of them that caused him to miss some time. Well, today on one run, it initially looked like somebody had tripped him up, but then maybe it was just that Guerendo had felt tightness in his hamstring. He had to exit practice, and he looked really frustrated. And Kyle Shanahan did confirm after practice that a hamstring was indeed the issue for Isaac Guerendo. So Christian McCaffrey went to check on him. Kyle Juszczyk went to check on him. Essentially, all the running backs went to check on Isaac Guerendo after he went down in practice today, and he did not look pleased. And Kyle Shanahan said there would have to be an MRI on the hamstring. So it looks like it could be a strain, and it looks like it could keep Isaac Guerendo out for a while. And the reason I bring it up is because there's some hamstring injury history here. Ricky Pearsall, by the way, the 49ers' other highly touted rookie, he's also currently out of practice because he also hurt his hamstring. This wasn't at the facility. This was over the course of the summer, probably a little bit earlier this month in Arizona. And Herm Edwards today, I think he was on 95.7 The Game, former coach of ASU, where Pearsall started his college career, said that Ricky actually dealt with some hamstring issues early in his college career because he just worked so hard, that he overworked, that you couldn't, rein this guy in. And because of that, he had some hamstring issues. Well, this injury obviously happened away from the facility where the 49ers were not able to keep a watchful eye on Ricky Pearsall. So that's definitely something to watch, because every offseason as a professional, you're not under the watchful eye of the 49ers strength staff, or you don't have to be. You can go back and work out in your hometown, which is what most of these guys do. So the 49ers, as my mic fell there a little bit, let's fix that right there. Yeah. So the 49ers, that's something that they're going to have to worry about. I think next offseason, you're going to have Ricky Pearsall in the building now over the course of the next few months. But as this turns into 2025, they're really going to have to make sure that he understands a firm workout plan and has a governor on him, because as Herm Edwards warned us, hamstring issues have been a problem for him in the past, just because he's a guy that works so damn hard. I will say that you'd rather have that problem, a guy that just busts his ass and goes 150 miles an hour day in and day out. You'd rather have that problem than that potentially leading to some hamstring issues. That's better than, a guy that's dogging it. That's not putting in a lot of effort, because that's also a way to get hurt. It's a way to get hurt during games, because it means that you're not in tip-top condition. But just interesting that Guerendo and Pearsall, two of the 49ers rookies, both dealt with hamstring issues in college, both dealing with hamstring issues now. There's Cody Schrader is another rookie. And, I was talking about this in OTAs. I was really, really impressed with Cody Schrader right out of the gate. He was the SEC's leading rusher last year. Somehow the 49ers were able to pick up the SEC's leading rusher as an undrafted free agent. Here he is, Schrader. And I've got to shade Guerendo into the injury shade. I think Schrader is going to be working his way up this pecking order sooner rather than later, because he just knows how to play the position. You could tell that he's comfortable running. You could tell that he's comfortable seeing where defenders might be coming from, seeing where the hole might be. Just a football player. The reason that Cody Schrader went undrafted is because his measurables were downright terrible compared to somebody like Isaac Guerendo's 4.6 40. The 3-cone wasn't great. The size isn't, off the charts. There's nothing from a measurable perspective that Cody Schrader excels at. But what he does excel at is playing the game of football. And we saw that in a Missouri uniform in the SEC last season. We saw a similar dynamic with Brock Purdy, right? Measurables weren't great for him except for the 10-yard split. But other stuff, the arm strength, I mean, he still deals with doubts about his arm strength today. But people physically talk about Brock Purdy and they say, he's not that imposing. How's he so good? Well, one of the reasons that allowed him to be so good entering the NFL was because he knew how to play the position. He had a ton of experience. Football is not a game that is just played by track and field numbers. Football is a nuanced, complex sport that requires a blend of the physical and the cerebral. Brock Purdy obviously mastered that over 4 years starting at Iowa State, which is why he showed up more ready to go and better than somebody like Trey Lance. That was the big question for the 49ers. And I think that you could see a similar dynamic with Cody Schrader and some of these other 49ers running backs. The direct comp on the other side is Isaac Guerendo, somebody who only started one game in college, who dealt with a lot of injuries in college, but who had amazing testing metrics coming out. He just isn't as experienced, isn't as good of a football player, at least yet, as Cody Schrader. So that battle in the running back room behind Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell has always projected to be a fascinating one to me, just because Guerendo and Schrader are such different types of players. Why don't we play some practice footage from today? Here's Dre Greenlaw. Look at Dre wearing the black sweatpants. He just can't stay away. You could tell how eager he is to be out there. Now, every time that we see Dre Greenlaw throw, and this is a pre-practice ritual with Fred Warner, by the way, or at least a warm-up ritual. Every time we see this, we are reminded of the fact that Dre Greenlaw is, like Steve Young, a lefty, a southpaw. I did not get Dre Greenlaw's other antics on video. He was actually hitting the blocking sled a little bit after this. There's the lefty throw. Now, Dre Greenlaw would be interesting on a trick play. He's got a little bit of a sidearm delivery as well. Always been fascinated watching Dre throw that football. Those a little bit like Tua. I don't know if he's as accurate as Tua, but it still is fun to watch at a practice, and it still is revelatory about Dre Greenlaw. Doesn't want to be in the back room rehabbing while the guys are out practicing. He wants to feel like he's part of the team. Look at Brock Purdy's quads. Kyle Shanahan calls them baby Bosa legs. Purdy, it is confirmed, has added some muscle this offseason. New 49ers drill. That's, by the way, a new 49ers linebacker, Devondre Campbell. This new 49ers fumble recovery drill, we're going to get back to it. I just wanted to give you one more shot of Brock Purdy. But the new fumble recovery drill seems to be using a volleyball. They're bouncing it up for these linebackers, and they're trying to recover the volleyball. But there's a look at the former Green Bay Packer, former Falcon, Devondre Campbell, wearing number 59 for the 49ers. All right, this is back to the look at the 49ers DBs. We'll replay this one because the DB room is so fascinating to me. There's Isaac Yiadom, 22, and that was Renardo Green, 31, the second round pick. And now we get to see Brock Purdy throwing to actual receivers. I know people just wanted to see the throwing mechanics of Purdy and Josh Dobbs. Well, this video is going to give you those. You'll also get a quick look at Tanner Mordecai, rookie quarterback out of Wisconsin, number 4. He is buried there at number 4 on the depth chart. This is the initial huddle to break at the start of practice for all of training camp for the 49ers. How to get that on tape. Then, I just said Dre Greenlaw really, really wanted to be part of things. Here you could see him joking around with Fred Warner on the field. Greenlaw currently on PUP, but I don't think he's going to be out the whole season. I think he might miss the first few games, 4 at least, but he'll be back probably after that. Fred Warner took this up last year, juggling for hand-eye coordination, and he's gotten better at it over the past 365 days. There you see Warner with the juggling. It is working very, very well. He was even tossing these balls high up into the air. This is something that Warner wasn't doing last year. This helps with hand-eye coordination so he can hold on to interceptions. The hope is that you turn pass breakups or drops as a defensive player into an actual interception. The 49ers take takeaways very seriously. They actually have the most interceptions in the NFL as a team over the past 2 years. Big time correction. The 49ers actually set NFL history in 2018 in the wrong way. They had the fewest interceptions of any team in NFL history in 2018, 2. They only had 2. In 2019, they had more interceptions, but it still wasn't a lot compared to, or, given how good their pass rush was. And then in 2021, it was a dropped interception from Jaquiski Tart that famously derailed the 49ers NFC Championship game hopes. So entering 2022, something had to change. This team had to get better at actually catching the football on defense, and they did. Charvarius Ward joined the team that year. That was a big addition in free agency. That helped. Tano Hufanga took over the starting job at safety. That also helped. I think Fred Warner's juggling might have helped at some point down the line. But over the past 2 seasons, the 49ers lead the league in interceptions. The turnover department has really been a good department for the 49ers. And the coach that's been in charge of the ball meeting, which is the giveaway takeaway meeting that emphasizes ball security on offense and ball hawkishness on defense, it's been Nick Sorensen, who's been promoted to the 49ers defensive coordinator role. Punt returns today at practice. We saw Jake Cowing, Ronnie Bell, and Trent Taylor line up back there. I'm sure that we'll see some Ricky Pearsall lined up back at punt returner when he returns. We're anticipating that's going to be next week. John Lynch said that Pearsall would probably miss the first block of training camp practices. So those are the 3. Taylor, obviously, probably a high floor guy. Taylor did not muff a single punt when he was with the 49ers for 4 years, from 2017 to 2020. And I think that's a hugely important part of that job, is just not screwing it up, because we've seen screw ups, including one in the Super Bowl when a punt hit off Darrell Luter Jr.'s leg and Ray McLeod wasn't able to fall onto it. We saw that probably determine the Super Bowl. I think if that play and that mistake doesn't happen, the 49ers beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So they just need to make sure that floor is as high as possible at punt returner. Ronnie Bell's going to get a shot at that job, but he looked rough last year. Wasn't great for Ronnie Bell. So maybe after, his rookie year is under his belt and has had some time to settle down and think about it, maybe Ronnie Bell will prove to be more reliable, but the first returns on him weren't great last year. And then Jacob Cowing, I talk about his burst. The upside is definitely there. If he's the fastest guy within 5 yards in the entire NFL combine out of that wide receiver position, that's somebody that you definitely want to try out at punt returner. But again, I think that floor is more important than ceiling at that punt return position. We should talk a little bit about Leonard Floyd's toughness. This is the new 49ers defensive end. You could take a look at the roster right here. So look down toward the defensive line. There's Floyd. Leonard is a grizzled veteran. He's a productive veteran. Leonard Floyd has 39.5 sacks over the past 4 years. Another thing that's probably even more impressive is that he hasn't missed a game in, I have to do the math, probably 7 or 8 seasons. He hasn't missed a game in 108 contests. 108 consecutive games for Leonard Floyd. As he explained to us months ago at this point, after the 49ers signed him, it's not like he's been injury-free over that 108 game stretch. He's gotten hurt. It's a violent sport. Everybody's going to get hurt, especially if you play in the trenches over that time. But this is a country-strong guy from Georgia. He's talked about that. He's talked about his upbringing working on the farm. This is a country-strong guy who has been able to grit his teeth and work through whatever discomfort there's been over the past 108 games. So lo and behold, today on the very first play of practice, Leonard Floyd goes down, starts grabbing at his ankle. Looks like he's in a lot of pain, limping off the field. Probably turned his ankle. Somebody said he grabbed his calf. I thought it was more the ankle. Either way, you don't like to see it on the first play of practice. Floyd was back in there on the very next series of practice. First practice of training camp. Just signed a fairly big deal with the 49ers, $10 million a year. He could easily sit that out. He doesn't need to get back in there. It's not going to affect his roster standing. Leonard Floyd wasn't having that. This guy's tough. And I think that's a way to set a tone at a training camp early on. Say, as one of the veterans, no, every one of these reps is important, especially if you got two of your guys holding out. I know Brandon Aiyuk's technically holding in, but he's not out of practice right now. Trent Williams wants more of his money guaranteed in all likelihood. He's not at practice right now. He's not in the building right now. He's holding out. So you got to make sure that you have some veterans that are leading the charge. And I think that we saw Leonard Floyd lead by example for the 49ers at practice today. So that's the full story from practice. We're going to open it up to a 49ers Q&A. We can talk about Trent Williams. We can talk about Brandon Aiyuk. We obviously saw Brandon Aiyuk. Then he walked up to John Lynch's office. They obviously did not finalize a contract in John Lynch's office today because that news would have already come out. Aiyuk is not getting fined because he's actually in the building. Trent Williams, meanwhile, is going to owe $50,000 for not showing up today. I think Williams contractually is in a similar situation to where Christian McCaffrey was during the offseason, and the 49ers were able to work something out with McCaffrey where they guaranteed some money. They tacked on some money, and he's now the highest paid running back in the game, but by a wider margin. Trent Williams, when he signed his current contract, was down at number one in NFL. Obviously, that surpassed David Bakhtiari to be the highest paid tackle. But now he's down at number 3 in terms of average per year. $27 million per year is the high watermark from Laramie Tunsil, and Trent Williams is at that 20, or I think it's $23 million per year for Trent Williams now. So he wants to climb back up near that high watermark, and he also wants more guaranteed money because he doesn't have any left on his deal. How the 49ers manage this, the details, that's going to be something that is contested because Trent, and it obviously is contested at this point, but I think the general structure has already been solved by how they handled Christian McCaffrey's situation. Williams is obviously different because he's 36 years old and you don't want to put too much guaranteed money into future years where he may retire because it's all going to accelerate and hit the cap sooner. I did a whole 20-minute video on this earlier this afternoon. So, that's different, but still, in general, you can convert base salary money into signing bonus now to make that guaranteed. So $20 million in base salary this year for Trent Williams could be reduced to 1-point-something million and convert into signing bonus. And then you could stretch that signing bonus out over the course of the contract so that it doesn't all hit the salary cap in the now. You can win-win this situation if you're the 49ers with Trent Williams, just how you executed a win-win with the Christian McCaffrey deal. All right, time for a 49ers Q&A. Excited to answer all of your excellent questions. I see 221 comments in the chat. That's awesome. By the way, Lombardi Lounge podcast is going strong. Some of you might be listening right now on the Lombardi Lounge podcast, but if you're not, then head over to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever they call it nowadays. Go to Apple Podcasts, go to Spotify, subscribe to the Lombardi Lounge, and give us a 5-star review. That would be really nice. If you're here on YouTube, just hit that thumbs up, hit that like button, and we can all go from there. Post your questions, says Mike. Does Trent's interest in a deal make it more likely he feels there is more than one season left to his career? I don't think so. I think Trent Williams just wants guaranteed money now. Now, the 49ers might be wanting some kind of commitment from Trent Williams that, okay, he's going to play beyond this 2024 season if they're going to give him that guaranteed money now. because the 49ers are going to be the ones on the hook, left with the bill, if they guarantee some money now and give Trent Williams some assurances, maybe even to 2025, and then he retires, right? So I think that's probably at the crux of the disagreement here, is that the 49ers are saying, hey, you're 36 years old, and Trent Williams is saying, hey, I'm the best tackle in football. And he's not wrong. He still is. So they have to find a way to make this work. They have to find some middle ground. And I circle back to the Christian McCaffrey solution as a possible prototype, but obviously they're going to have to give this one its own flavor because Trent Williams is 36 years old. He's significantly older. Trent can retire after a Super Bowl win at Levi's after the 2025 season. That's possible. One commenter brings that up. So that would be 2 more years for Trent Williams. I don't know what's going through his head because I haven't been able to talk to him because he's not even in the building right now. So we're just going to have to hold our horses and wait for the time being. How bad do I think Ricky Pearsall's injury really is? Well, I think that he's got a hamstring strain of some sort, and John Lynch feels that he's going to miss the first block of training camp practices. I'm not sure exactly when the injury occurred. It was reported, and Pearsall went to NFI a week before training camp started when rookies reported to the facility because they report early. And it happened at some point before then. So if the 49ers reported on July 23rd, the injury to Pearsall was logged and he was put on NFI on July 16th. So it likely happened in that first half of July. We could do some detective work and probably figure out when Pearsall posted his last practice training video. But hamstring strains, I mean, these could take a few weeks. It's already been more than a week, at least. And John Lynch's prognostication, which came yesterday, hinted that it would take at least another week, that he would be back at some point during the second block of practices. Jalen says that Ricky is wide receiver 4, so it's not a huge deal. Yeah, I mean, he's lower on the pecking order now. I get it, but he could be a weapon. You want to develop him. All these reps are valuable. You're trying to play a dual track kind of thing here where you're working on the short term with your veterans, but also on the longer term with your rookies. To the point where you get your rookies so ready to play that when inevitable injuries to the veterans do happen, Ricky Pearsall is able to step in. So I think the 49ers would like him back as soon into the padded portion of training camp as possible. Right now, pads are not yet on. Pads come on next week, probably on Monday after the Sunday day off. And when pads come back on, press man coverage can commence. The Amara Lenore can get up in your face and give you a lot of trouble within those first 5 yards. One of the biggest tests for a rookie receiver at the NFL level is how he can shed press coverage and separate against it. That's the one big question that everybody has for Ricky Pearsall right now. Even if he were healthy this week, he really wouldn't be able to prove much in that regard because the pads aren't on yet. Next week, the pads come on. And if Ricky Pearsall's back in time for that, I'm excited to watch. With Ricky and Aiyuk both out of practice, who's taking advantage of the playing time? Well, let's take a look at the 49ers roster. Zero in on that receiver position. So obviously, no Ricky, no Brandon Aiyuk with the hold in. Deebo Samuel is a featured weapon, and he looks like he's in really good shape. Juwan Jennings made a few good catches today. Chris Conley is now wearing number 18. They went for Jacob Cowing once on that deep pass. I think that out of players that are taking advantage of the extra opportunities, Danny Gray on the first day seemed to be the one that flashed in front of me the most. He's wearing the number 6. Danny Gray was definitely targeted today, made a couple catches, and it is an offseason that he has to deliver in. As you can see, this is a 53-man roster projection, and I have Gray on the outside looking in. That's Not where you want to be as Danny Gray, but he's got all of training camp here to change that for the 49ers roster equation. And I'm sure Kyle Shanahan would love if that indeed does become the case, because Danny Gray does have potential game-breaking speed. It's going to be about the ability to block if you're Danny Gray. It's going to be about the, when you look at the 49ers receiver room, Kyle Shanahan demands multifaceted contributions from every single one of these players. So in the case of Brandon Aiyuk, he's a phenomenal blocker on top of the fact that he's a great route runner. In the case of Deebo Samuel, he could play running back on top of receiver. In the case of Jawan Jennings, he's obviously a savage blocker. These are the guys that have separated themselves as the top 3 receivers on this roster. For anybody else to crack that top 3, or to at least become a part of a top 4 where the 4th receiver sees considerable playing time, a multifaceted skill set is going to have to be shown. So Gray can flash all he wants here in the non-padded practices, but he better be ready to thump as a blocker once the padded practices start next week. That's why it's so exciting, and that's why we can't just zero in on what's happening today. That's why the big picture is so important once pads do come on. We do not know the extent of Isaac Guerendo's injury yet because he needs to undergo an MRI. Guessing an MRI is going to happen tomorrow. It's typically a morning thing. It was, although they did practice fairly early, so maybe he was able to undergo one today. But the MRI will tell us the extent of damage in Isaac Guerendo's hamstring. Reports saying first day of run D was bad. Well, I could tell you what, you could take whoever made a report that the run defense was bad and tell them they don't know anything about football. Anybody who's trying to tell you that defense was good or bad on the first day of practice without pads is just trying to get clicks. There is no way to tell if the run defense was good or bad, because running football in the NFL is a physical thing. It's dependent on actual pads, actual blocking, and actual tackling. None of that stuff was happening at 49ers practice today. So that is a big red flag. If somebody is telling you, multiple reports are telling you that run defense was bad, that is somebody broadcasting to the world that they do not know what they're talking about. Eddie asks, prediction on running back 2 this season. Jordan Mason. I mean, I think that'd be a dark horse pick. Elijah Mitchell is firmly in that spot as long as he's healthy. Now, people are saying, well, maybe they'll trade Elijah Mitchell. He could be the number 1 elsewhere. First of all, Elijah Mitchell needs to prove he can stay healthy to have some real trade value for the 49ers. Second of all, I don't think that a trade is a legitimate possibility if your running backs are starting to drop, if your running backs are starting to get hurt. First day of practice, Isaac Guerendo pulls up lame with a hamstring injury. So, everybody's talking about Elijah Mitchell being expendable over the course of the offseason. But is he really expendable if guys in this room start getting hurt? Because then you'll barely have enough to fill the 53-man roster. The running back position has consistently been the most injured position on the 49ers roster under Kyle Shanahan. I mean, go back to 2021. In 2021, the 49ers literally ran out of capable running backs, and they had to move Deebo Samuel into the backfield. So I struggle to think that the 49ers are going to jettison one of their, top backups, and Elijah Mitchell is the top backup at the position, unless they're absolutely sure that they are brimming with talent that's going to stay healthy at that position. Yes, they have traded backs in the past. They've traded Jeff Wilson Jr., but that was right after they picked up Christian McCaffrey, and they traded Matt Breida. They were able to get 5th-round picks for those guys. But in general, this has been a room that the 49ers have liked to keep stocked. And as long as Elijah Mitchell's on this team and as long as he's healthy, and I get it, that's a big if, I think he's number 2 over Jordan Mason. And yes, I think the 49ers will want to keep Jordan Mason for all the reasons that I just outlined. Who's the most ripped player in camp? Bosa or Malik Mustapha? Well, how about a third option? How about Brock Purdy? How about baby Bosa legs, Brock Purdy? We have some footage from practice today where we can take a look at Purdy, by the way. Right after this Dre Greenlaw clip. There he is. So the most ripped player in camp, I think Brock Purdy deserves honorable mention. I'm not seriously saying that he's more ripped than Nick Bosa. I'm just saying that Brock Purdy has got a pretty damn strong base. All right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about, there, you could see Purdy's base. This is a good screenshot. Which quarterbacks in the NFL have a stronger base than Brock Purdy? Okay, maybe Jalen Hurts. He's got the 900-pound squat record. We all know that. That was definitely promoted by the media throughout the course of last season. I know that Josh Allen is pretty damn strong. I know that Dak Prescott has a strong base. But to be honest, you look at Brock Purdy's quads, you look at the way that he's able to shake off guys that were trying to sack him last year. I still remember that one play in the NFC Championship game against Detroit where he's able to somehow get away from the sack, roll out, and throw to Kyle Juszczyk, who got both feet in bounds. You just look at the strength that Brock Purdy has shown in the pocket, and then you see the size of the quads, and you see the shorter stature. I mean, I think this is a top 3 base quarterback in the league, which to me is remarkable considering the fact that he was picked number 262, because a base is one of the physical attributes that you look at when you're trying to pick a quarterback. It's one of the main physical attributes that you look at. You want a quarterback to have a strong base. And somehow, even though Purdy had a great score, great performance in that particular physical attribute, somehow, some way, he was still overlooked all the way until the end of the 7th round. Will Levis. Yeah, Will Levis is also very strong. But I don't know if Will Levis is as strong of a base as Brock Purdy. Levis is strong. He's got the upper body. He's got the biceps. Don't get me wrong, he's got strong legs. But there's a reason they call Purdy baby Bosa legs, because those quads are very strong and they help him a lot when it comes to shaking off pressure in the pocket. Ryan says, sorry I'm late to the party, but it was reported that Purdy was still rehabbing his elbow until Thanksgiving last season. That's crazy. What's my take on that? I think that this is something I kind of talked about over the course of last season. I think that it was implicitly understood that Brock Purdy was not going to be 100% as far as accuracy and throwing velocity week 1 of last season, because he was coming off of a serious elbow injury and he came back from it extremely quickly. I mean, it was, I don't want to say it was miraculous, but a lot of people were highly doubting Brock Purdy's ability to be on the field by week 1. He wasn't on the field by week 1. He was on the field by the first day of training camp. And during training camp, he still was getting days off to make sure that his elbow progression and his re-strengthening would go according to schedule. So I think that we all knew that Brock Purdy was on a build-up plan. I think that we all figured that it would take probably a good chunk of the season for him to get fully up to 100% capacity. The way that these recoveries work is that going from 30% to 80% generally happens fairly quickly. But once you're at 80%, 85%, getting from 85% to 100%, it starts to slow down there. It starts to be a little bit harder to get that last couple percent, because then you're really trying to work yourself into tip-top shape. So to me, it wasn't surprising at all that Brock Purdy was still rounding into form coming into November. In fact, I think that's something that we knew at the time. I think it's just been repackaged for headlines now. It's a story now, right? But I think that's something that was just part of the natural part of the progression for Brock Purdy last season. David thinks that Purdy's going to win the MVP. Well, he's already a finalist last season. Mike asked, how does Isaac Yiadom look? I mean, he's physical. If you're asking me how he looks, I can literally show you at the start of this video. You're going to get to see Isaac Yiadom after you see Malik Mustapha. Speaking of physical, Malik Mustafa's physical, 43, the mini linebacker. But we're going to pan over to 22, Isaac Yiadom right now. There he is, right in the middle of the screen. He's long. He's wiry. He had 11 pass breakups last season. I paused the video here just so you can have another look at Isaac Yiadom. So with all those pass breakups for the Saints in half a season after he took over for Paulson Adebo, it was a career year. I mean, Charvarius Ward led the league with, I think, 15 or 16 pass breakups last year. He played the full season. Isaac Yiadom only started half the season and he had 11. This was a hell of a season, and they're able to bring him in. And I think that the performance that we saw from Yiadom and the body type, that big, strong press man coverage, we've seen it with Richard Sherman. He's even taller. Sherman is 6'3", but we've seen that type of body succeed in a cover 3 system, and that's the 49ers bread and butter. With the track record and the size, I think Isaac Yiadom has put himself at the top of the 49ers depth chart in those nickel situations to be the outside cornerback opposite Charvarius Ward. That means that Diamara Lenore slides into nickel in those spots. Is Brock Purdy's upper body built as well? I mean, it is. You've seen the video. You've seen the pictures of Brock Purdy. I could put him back up on here. That's Devondre Campbell. It's not Brock Purdy. There's Brock Purdy. Upper body. I mean, no, he's not massively jacked in the upper body. I think he's big enough to withstand hits. It's tricky as a quarterback. You can't get too big because then you're going to lose torque on your throws. Like when I'm swimming in the bay, I weigh about 212. If I get up to 230, even if it's a ton of muscle, I'm probably going to become a worse swimmer because I'm not going to be able to get the range that I need on my freestyle, right? Like I have to maintain some sort of flexibility. So I have to have as much strength as possible to be able to grab as much water as possible and move. Similar thing with throwing the football. You're going to want some range of motion and some snap with your elbow, with your arm to be able to get maximum velocity on the ball. There's a reason why the most jacked, the buffest guys aren't quarterbacks, right? Like it just, the physics don't work that way. So Purdy's plenty strong in his upper body to withstand some hits, but most of the muscle is going to be in the lower body for him because it's more important to have that base strong, but you want to leave the upper body flexible so you can develop and maintain good velocity with your throws. It's way too early to say how Tanner Mordecai looked. Tanner Mordecai is the 4th quarterback on this roster right now. There's a battle for number 2 going on between Josh Dobbs and Brandon Allen. Tanner Mordecai is not going to have a lot of reps at all in training camp. He's going to have to prove that he belongs in the meeting room with his command of the field. If he does that, then he may have a shot at a few more reps, and he may have a shot to deliver during one of the preseason games. August 10th at Tennessee is the first one. That's how Brock Purdy was able to splash onto the scene for the 49ers in 2022. But at this point, it's just too early to be talking about Tanner Mordecai because the full breadth of his opportunity is not yet here. Brock has indeed always had a big lower half, but he has, and he confirmed this today, added a couple pounds of muscle. Do the players have team provided housing during camp? Yes, that they can stay at the hotel during training camp. That's an option. Back when the 49ers used to have training camp away from the facility, so that was in either Rockland, Sierra College, which is actually Brandon Aiyuk's alma mater, or Stockton, University of the Pacific, 49ers players actually stayed in dorms. The dorms at Sierra College in Rockland used to house Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Steve Young, Ken Norton Jr., all those guys. So now it's more of a thing, especially for the 49ers, to have the training camp at their actual facility. They do, however, give players the opportunity to stay in the hotel down the road if they so choose. It's not mandatory anymore, though. Everybody, you could stop right now and smash that like button because I've just crossed the hour mark. I decided to go crazy. It's what, 8:40 p.m.? We can go for a while here. This is fun. I'm having a good time. Why don't we make this a mega show? First day of training camp, I think mega show is definitely in the cards. All right, let's toss in some good questions here. The crowd continues to grow. As long as the crowd continues growing, I could stay live. What's for dinner? I had a burrito for dinner today from Taqueria Cancun. Didn't get any footage of dinner today. So, unfortunately, I don't think we have a food component of the show. I'm still trying to get in rhythm here with training camp, and we're still trying to figure out some of these contract situations, how to cover them with Trent Williams and with Brandon Aiyuk. So I haven't been able to get on location in San Francisco. I haven't really had enough time to get all the food. Although breakfast was really good. Had Jumpstart Coffee over at 24th and Guerrero. I think it's the best breakfast sandwich in San Francisco. The Lombardi Mega Show. Yep, that's what we're doing here. Nice. Wine toast from Oregon. I was thinking about heading up to Oregon over Labor Day weekend. I'm going to go somewhere else instead, but kind of want to see that Oregon coastline. I have a question about Kyle Shanahan letting Brock Purdy have more freedom with play calling at the line of scrimmage. And I believe that we have a good video that Mike helped cut up of Kyle Shanahan talking about some of the responsibilities that he gives Brock Purdy. That's one that I will try to open up here for you because this opens up an entire discussion. And I thought Kyle Shanahan had a lot of good points when he talked to Tim Kawakami on his podcast yesterday. And we do indeed have the video. So why don't we play this one talking about Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, and quarterback freedom in the 49ers offense?
It's always a weird question. He's free to play football. Did you watch him play his rookie year versus Miami? I mean, he ran all over the place. So, like, Brock's going to react and go. One of the things that guys, if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know where the ball is and you aren't reading coverages and your anxiety's high and you're revved up, a lot of times you get in that pocket and you can't see anything and you just look for exit angles and you try to break and get out of there. And when you do that, sometimes you make plays, sometimes you don't. The key is how to tie both together. How can you help other people make plays when there's an opportunity for you to do it? Can you react and just go? But if you're just looking for that, sometimes it's hard to be a good quarterback. And I think Brock's done a great job at balancing both of those out. I think the more he plays, the more you always get better at the drop back stuff, which I think can help you not have more freedom to. It could help your mind make quicker decisions on when it's time to do it, when I do have a bad look, when I have a good look and I want to wait on something, times in games, weather, things like that. That just goes with experience.
So that built on to what Kyle Shanahan was telling Tim Kawakami yesterday on the podcast. Have a listen to the TK show. Thought that was really, really good stuff. The quarterback always has freedom to make changes at the line. Kyle Shanahan gives the quarterback freedom to make changes, but he encourages them and he hopes to make the system good enough, foolproof enough to where the quarterback doesn't need to make changes. Because the goal of the 49ers offense under Kyle Shanahan is to simplify life for the quarterback, have the center deal with the protections, have the play caller actually do a competent job, simplify life for the quarterback so that he can play as fast as possible and fit the ball into the tight windows that expose defenses. There are different philosophies around the NFL. Kyle Shanahan actually pointed out that he's worked under both ends of the spectrum. When he worked under John Gruden was all about the quarterback, full freedom, you set protections, you do everything. Then Kyle Shanahan worked under Gary Kubiak, who was the total opposite. The quarterback never set protections. That was all up to the center, and it was up, obviously, to the coaching staff. Kyle Shanahan finds himself to be somewhere in the middle. The center sets the protections for the 49ers. Obviously, the play comes in for the sideline, and you would hope that Shanahan is competent enough, and I think he's proven to be competent enough to have a good play there that's going to work for the quarterback most of the time. But even though that is the order of operations, Purdy still has the license to freelance. So there's a little bit of both going on. And Shanahan brought up the example of Brock Purdy running around as a rookie against Miami in 2022 when he first took over that quarterback position to show, yeah, the quarterback is able to freewheel. In that way, I think that Brock Purdy is the ideal quarterback for Kyle Shanahan because he follows instructions enough to where he's playing within the structure of the system, but Shanahan's not a perfect play caller. There is no perfect play caller. There are always going to be times when the quarterback has to improvise. And I think Brock Purdy has proven that he knows and has a good feel of when to improvise and when to stay on script. Plus, he's got the athleticism to be able to improvise successfully. So hopefully that answers the question. Carlo asks, did Latu practice today? Yes, he did practice today. Didn't hear much from Cam Latu today. David points out that Shanahan is one of the best defensive coaches in the NFL. It's the first thing he learned in the NFL. Yes, he was on the defensive side of the football on John Gruden's staff in Tampa Bay, which I think makes Kyle Shanahan fundamentally different than a lot of the offensive wizards that might even be in his own coaching tree in the NFL today. He's actually worked specifically on the defensive side of the ball, and that's allowed him to, I think, be a good head coach because he understands both sides of the football. Mike points out that Purdy also kills plays based on what he sees on defense. That is correct. And I think that Purdy's going to develop a better and better feel of what to kill and what to roll with as he sees more snaps. He's only seen a season and a half worth of snaps. Peyton Manning's interception rate at this point of his career was still astronomical because it takes a while to truly learn the ins and outs of NFL football, which makes Brock Purdy's start number one ranking in efficiency across the board, top quarterback in the league. It makes Brock Purdy's career start all the more impressive. There's only room to grow up for Brock Purdy. He's already been awesome, but he still has room to develop even more of a command of what's going on. And I think we could really evaluate his growth and a lot of things through the little nuances of what he does at the line, how often he overrules Shanahan. Does he, how comfortable he gets within the context of the system. Matt Ryan, it took Matt Ryan an entire season to trust the system. If you look at Matt Ryan's numbers in 2016, his second year under Kyle Shanahan versus 2015, his first year under Kyle Shanahan with the Atlanta Falcons, night and day difference between year one and year two. And that's when Matt Ryan finally started trusting the process and really breaking into what the Falcons were trying to do, and they soared to top level efficiency. Will Trent Williams' contract help Aiyuk's contract situation? Will it free up more money? It will give the 49ers more cap flexibility, funny enough. So once they figure out this Trent Williams situation, in general, what's going to happen is you're going to see a lower base salary this year for Trent Williams, maybe the league minimum. You're going to see that base salary converted to a signing bonus, which is spread out for over 5 years against the cap. And that's going to give the 49ers much more leeway and much more room in the short term, in 2024, 2025, and possibly even 2026. Everything needs to be viewed collectively because it's a gigantic puzzle. It's a big game of Tetris. Brock Purdy's new contract is probably coming in next offseason. So you have to fit that, and you have to fit this, and then obviously you're going to have to fit Brandon Aiyuk as well. Then if you want to keep Deebo Samuel, you're going to have to fit that as well. The biggest ally that you have as the 49ers is the rising salary cap. But the second biggest ally that you have is the signing bonuses that can push money into the future against the cap while simultaneously keeping players happy because they get paid out right now. So yes, in a very complicated way, as I just explained, hopefully I explained it well, Trent Williams' new contract can potentially help the Brandon Aiyuk contract because it will give the 49ers more flexibility over the next 2 or 3 years. Rollover funds into 2025. Mike has nailed it. It is exactly that. We have a lot of good questions today. I'm really enjoying the questions, so keep on bringing them. Yes, I did watch the show Receiver on Netflix. I even wrote a 2,000-word piece about Receiver on Netflix. How about I pop that up on the screen? Just wait till you see this. To go to my page up on Athletic. I've written a lot of articles over the course of the last month, more than you would expect for it being the dead period of the year. So you say that you hope that I watched Receiver. Well, I can raise this to you in response. That's the article I wrote about the Receiver series on Netflix. It was good. I thought it was really good. Gave us insight into the George Kittle situation. He played really hurt last year. So many people try to trash George Kittle, even though he was literally playing with multiple painful injuries. He had to go get a numbing agent for his shoulder so he'd be able to lift it above his head there at the end of overtime. So I think that it should have given viewers a good appreciation of what these guys in the NFL go through. How will the pending lawsuit affect NFL salary cap if the fine is upheld? Well, first of all, if it's upheld, this is going to be, even if it is upheld, it's going to be a long process of appeals. This was the NFL lawsuit against NFL. It's a class action lawsuit actually started initially by a bar in San Francisco in the Sunset District. It was a direct TV thing. But obviously, the initial ruling was for hundreds of millions of dollars against the NFL in the class action lawsuit, but it's going to be appealed. It's probably going to be appealed multiple times. So it's going to take a while for this to hit the bottom line. The NFL will probably have to move some money into escrow because it's just like a judgment hold kind of situation. But I don't think that it's going to impact the salary cap in the short term because the salary cap is tied to revenue. It's not tied to what the league has to pay and a potential lawsuit. I don't think that would impact the cap until the payment has to become finalized. And this is uncharted territory, so I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly how the mechanics are going to work, but I do know that the salary cap is tied to league revenue, and I do know that the judgment is not yet finalized on this lawsuit because we are going to see many, many appeals. I never criticize anything about the team. How about the 5 minutes that I spent earlier today on this show talking about Jake Brendel's low snaps? How about the fact that I was the first person to call to attention the 49ers' number 26 ranked run defense? If I didn't bring up the 49ers' struggling run defense last year, nobody would have brought it up. I was the only person talking about the 49ers' bad run defense. No, you have it wrong. I'm actually the only person that is delivering the facts about the 49ers, whether they're good or whether they're bad. I'm the one that's not doing it for clicks. So why don't you get your facts straight before you comment here? Meanwhile, I'm going to block you. Do I still think that we have to hold our breath every single time Moody kicks? Listen, he was an 80% kicker last year. Is that great? No. Is it terrible? No. It was above average in the league and he was a rookie. The inconsistency in the playoffs, I think, is what made 49ers fans nervous. And it stood in contrast to Robbie Gould, who literally never missed in the playoffs. So when you look at that, which is NFL history, Robbie Gould, and you go to anything else, it's obviously going to make you apprehensive. But at some point, the 49ers were going to have to move on from Robbie Gould. He's now retired. He's now coaching at Jimmy Garoppolo's former high school, Rolling Meadows High School in Arlington Heights Illinois. So they had to take the leap. They did it last year because Robbie Gould probably wanted too much money, and they went to Jake Moody. On top of the fact that he, missed some kicks in the postseason, including the blocked extra point in the Super Bowl, he also made some really tough kicks that Robbie Gould probably wouldn't have made. I mean, Robbie Gould's range was starting to really falter toward the end of his career. He made a couple of 50-plus yarders in the Super Bowl. So 80% kicker his rookie year. He was making 50 yarders in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. Clutch kicks. I think that you have to acknowledge that that was trending in the right direction to end last season. And you've got to give the guy a chance to grow into his NFL role. Robbie Gould, as a rookie, was also not a 100% kicker. Robbie Gould had to grow into becoming a really damn good kicker over a couple decades in the NFL. So Moody, just like any young player, has to develop at the professional level, and I think it's headed in the right direction. How did Yetur Gross-Matos look? He's wearing the number 94, lined up inside a little bit. I know they're going to run him inside out, right? I guess outside in. He's an edge rusher on base downs. Inside, maybe some of that Arden Key roll, but he's bigger on those nickel packages when they want that defensive end rushing with his athleticism against opposing guards. The pads aren't on yet, so I'm not here to evaluate defensive line play and offensive line play. It's just way too early for that. That's why, you can't evaluate the run defense. You can't say they were good. You can't say they're bad. Pads aren't even on at this point yet. So it's a complete joke to look at defensive linemen and try to evaluate their performance collectively this early in training camp. How much stock should fans take in daily reports from training camp? Well, if they're coming from me, you could put a lot of stock into it. Those have all been proven to be accurate. If they're coming from other places, those are all proven to be wrong. I mean, if you got your training camp news from the wrong source last year, you thought that Trey Lance was the best quarterback on the 49ers. Trey Lance wasn't even better than Sam Darnold. I think I reported accurately last year that Brock Purdy looked really damn good and he was ready for an MVP caliber season. Lo and behold, my training camp reports translated to the regular season. I reported that Sam Darnold looked better than Trey Lance. Lo and behold, Sam Darnold beat out Trey Lance. So just be careful where you get your information from, because some people are putting a lot of misinformation out there and some people are actually reporting the truth. This is a good summary of Jake Moody. As an elite leg and an apparently great attitude. David Marazzo said that he's happy to have him. I think he's got a good attitude, and the leg definitely is elite. You saw it with the 50-plus yarders. Now we get to see if he can make adjustments after some of those struggles in his rookie season. Yeah, that was kind of funny last year. People overreacting to Brock Purdy interceptions. Even when really reputable sources like Christian McCaffrey were telling them, guys, Brock is doing some special stuff. Brock is experimenting. Brock is going to have a big year. But instead of listening to Christian McCaffrey, a lot of people, because they were so far down the Trey Lance rabbit hole, decided to listen to random people talking on the internet. And they decided to trust those people about Brock Purdy more than Christian McCaffrey, who obviously knows what he's talking about to a much greater extent than random people with an internet connection. Spoiler alert, Christian McCaffrey was right. Spoiler alert, I was right about that too. Like I listen to smart people. That's my way of getting these things right. I sit back. That's why I'm unbiased, because I just sit back and I collect information. I don't try to reach a conclusion that's already drawn up in my head. I don't try to say, oh, Trey Lance, yeah, he has to be QB1. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to force it happen. No, I sit back. I collect information. I use common sense. All right, Brock Purdy, he's going to win that quarterback battle. There wasn't even a battle last year. Brock Purdy was the one. I watched information trickle in for QB2. Sam Darnold's going to win that battle. Okay, gather the info, process the info. It's clear. Talk to smart people. Make sure that they have it right. Report it. And then you don't look dumb at the end of the day. I think it's a fairly simple process. Carlo thinks that Nick Bosa will have at least 15 sacks this year. Thinks the numbers are going to tick back up for Nick Bosa after a relatively down 2023 season. he was facing a lot of double teams, but he just didn't come out of the gate quite as fast as 2022. And he missed training camp. Not a surprise. This year, Bosa was there, day one of training camp. And it's a question of getting Brandon Aiyuk and Trent Williams in training camp as soon as possible now for the 49ers. When am I coming back to the 559? Not sure. But when I do, maybe we can organize a meetup. Officially, we will be having a meetup in Nashville at a bar to be named the day before the 49ers play the Titans in the preseason. So August 9th. Probably a bar somewhere near Broadway in Nashville. So put that onto your calendars. I will be sending out an RSVP link that we're going to put onto the show. And I'll probably be sharing that on multiple shows over the course of the next 10 days or so. And then through that RSVP link, we'll have your email and we'll be able to send you the location of the meetup in Nashville. It'll be casual, but we talk about the 559 coming back to the Central Valley. We'll have to do a meetup there as well, but Nashville will be the first spot ahead of the 49ers' first preseason game. Being Butterfly, excited about Malik Mustapha. How about we take a quick look at the 49ers offensive line? This was some interesting footage from practice. See McKivitz in there. I think Spencer Burford looks like he's more trim. I think he looks like he's in more athletic shape than last season. I think that he put in a good hard offseason of work. I'm not sure if he worked out with Trent Williams. I know in the past, Burford had worked out with Williams, flown around with Williams on his private jet. But you see Burford, 74, covered up there by Colton McKivitz. This is just a nice quick look at the 49ers group of offensive linemen from practice. You want to do a live stream of the meetup? That'd be cool. Do a little live stream with fans of the meetup. Well, we'll think of something awesome to do during the meetup. But I'm just letting you guys know that that's going to be on the books ahead of the 49ers and Titans on August 9th in Nashville. Can I do a meetup in the Bay Area? Yeah. I think that the thing about a meetup in the Bay Area is that it's a little bit more ambitious since there's going to be so many more people because 49ers fans are concentrated in the Bay Area. So we just have to be careful with crowd management and all that. We don't want to overrun a bar with too many people. So that's why we're starting in Nashville, because I think it's going to be a little bit more manageable. And then we'll grow the meetups into something a little bit more ambitious in the Bay Area. Happy birthday to Gopher Baroque. Awesome. Happy birthday to you. All right. This was a long show. We did a mega show. It's already past 9:00 though. So I think it's time to tap out, get some rest. Big training camp practice tomorrow. Everybody, thanks for joining. It was a lot of fun. Did a long 49ers Q&A. We will talk to you next time.